It's your brother G World 7_D back at it again with the book When Blacks Ruled Greece and Rome, the West Maritime Civilization Before Ancient Eurasian Conquest. Now I'm going to read several things here. I'm going to go to page 109. Yeah, 109. Alright. There's some things the author said I disagree with, but I want to make a point as usual. Reconstructed skulls of indigenous Americans drawn from remains found in the warm mineral springs, Florida and South America, match that of Australians, Melanesians, and Sub-Saharan Africans. In other words, they share genetic features to other Africans in diaspora. Okay, I don't like the term we keep using, the Africans, because we're not Africans, but okay. But like Black Americans, the 12,000-year-old skull of Naia, found off the coast of the Yucatan Peninsula, matches Australian and Sub-Saharan Africans. The Khalifian indigenous inhabitants of California were descendants of West Africans, Olmecs, early Egyptian Pacific Islanders. Strong DNA anthropological evidence proves that the first Americans were black and of African descent. First Americans were black and of African descent. In addition, there's archaeological evidence of pyramids found in Kemet and cliff dwellings of Mali, Africa, built by them and their descendants. Okay, and then it goes on. Blacks have genetically seeded Native Americans. I'm going to skip that part. I'm going to go further down here. And because I want to highlight certain things up in here. That's about Leo Weiner. He talked about, and here's, okay, from black to Indian red. The primary colors for any color is black. Indian red is a brown color, derived from a mixture that dilutes color in the primary color. Referring to people within the Indian red complexion as distinct from other black people is an attempt to alienate them and the primary complexion, which is black or shades of brown. Black, Indian red, yellow, and white are all social constructs. I don't agree with that. To divide and demean people of color from the white ideal holding hegemony over people with greater melanin and lower socioeconomic status within the last 200 years. South American narcotics found in Egyptian mummies, which they had cocaine in the Egyptian mummies. Egyptian artifacts found in North America in the areas of the Grand Canyon. Alright. You can see them colors like red, black, and green too. Pyramid in Mexico with the steps. Alright. You see the Olmec here. Alright. And what I want to go, and I want to read this part here. Go back and read this part here. Read a little bit of this. According to Harold Sterling Gladwin, 1883 to 1983, the first migrants to America were Afro-Australoids, who colonized much of Asia and Australia more than 50,000 years ago. They entered the Americas more than 40,000 years ago. The Punan skulls remained from Ecuador in 1923 confirmed that these blacks of very ancient African ancestry were the first Americans. A second wave of migration began about 15,000 years ago. The physical appearance matched that of Melanesians, who are proud black islanders of the South Pacific. The remains are found in the Baja, California, northeastern Mexico, Central America, and various parts of South America. Alright, and we're going to trace it down, go further down here, read this right here. Carlos C. Marquez, a Latin author, wrote in 1920 that black people were the first people in America. The American Indians over time rose from these people. Marquez goes on to call Americas a Negro continent. He labeled the Otomis of Mexico, the Caracos of Haiti, the Mayas of Brazil, and the albinos of Panama as black aboriginals, whom the red or Native Americans originated. Alexander von Woutens adds that blacks were found in all parts of Mexico, especially during the ancient or pre-classical times. Leo Weiner points out that their presence is confirmed by Columbus's empathetic reference to Negro traders from Guinea who trafficked in a gold alloy in Guinan, as well as pre-Columbian sculpture and design. There are Ecuador statues of revered blacks that are at least 20,000 years old. Okay, now that was before any other group. White folks didn't exist, and them Asians didn't exist 20,000 years ago. All right, white folks, the only people on the earth for 20,000 years ago were Negroes. Numerous statues and monuments of Indian goddess and gods in Central America possess typical black African features. Black African masks and artifacts persist through 300 BC. Besides, appearances cultural between African Americans closely resemble one another. All right, and let's see. And this one right here, I'm going to skip that, and I'm going to go further down. Black Indian Ecuador. You can obviously tell that's a Negro, man. This is the Americas. Ecuador. Okay. Look like the hat and the head and the big looped earrings. Ecuador. I think I showed that picture in one of my other books. Alright, here's another pyramid of the Americas. Just like you had the step pyramid of Egypt, not step pyramid, the step pyramid of Egypt, actual steps here. Like this is the stairway to heaven. You're walking yourself up to the heavens, the skies. Like I said before in other videos, these are ancient astronomers, what these ancient black people did in the Americas. All right, these are ancient astronomers who were sky gazers. All right, and this is obviously Montezuma. Zuma. And remember, you look deep in the background, you see the city back, all these structures, but this pin structure, this dome type structure, you see at every state capitol building. And in one of my earlier videos, I have shown this. In every state capitol building, you see that image that's back there. So they stole that design for the Aboriginal blacks. You see this building structure right over here with the X cross. Remember I showed you them black Europeans with the X and the shield. Alright. We'll go and read this about the Aztecs. Okay. The Great Pyramid of Cholula is hidden under a mountain. It is estimated to have been built more than 2,000 years ago. Cholula was the second largest city in Mexico when the first Europeans led by Cortez arrived. This conqueror and his Spaniard soldiers murdered 30,000 of 100,000 that lived in the city of Cholula. They first came in peace or pretended to do so, estimated, then sold their valuables as well as many lives. The residents of Cholula had mandatory universal education, as did all Aztecs. They introduced to the world popcorn, chocolate, chewing gum, advanced medicine to prevent muscle spasms. Alright, these black Indians, well, I'm not going to read that part, but see, here's the black Indians. Alright, this is the Aztecs. And you know it's similar, like the Aztecs kind of look similar like what you see as a Zulu. I mean, I'm serious. But look at the feathers on here. like I said, and look at that image in the background, that little needle, them structures, those architectural structures back there. And I showed a clear picture earlier, and then it's the dome and the needle back there. That's the similarity, and as like I said, you see that with every state capital. Every state, and then the U.S. main capital. All right. Go on here. The rise of Greece from Black Africa out of Proto-Saharan Black Africa. All right. The first colonized Europeans, the Grimaldi, an African tribal nation, inhabited Europa, or ancient Europe, until 1600 BC. Allegedly, climate change caused by the last ice age and subsequent springtime flooding drove them southward to a more stable climate in equatorial and sub-equatorial Africa. Skeletal remains in Europa verify the Grimaldi residency in this continent, now mainly inhabited by Aryans and other Caucasian groups. Black Africans also maintained control of most of the civilizations in the Mediterranean until most of the tribal Caucasians began breaking through the defenses starting in second millennium before the Christian era. Until the Greek and Roman invasions, sub-Saharan Africans maintained their hegemony over these Mediterranean and northeastern African civilizations when the original Greeks and Romans were black anyway. Black Africans actually founded civilization that the Greeks and Romans supplanted. The Aryan Greeks conquered and co-opted Mycenae, Crete, and Egyptian empires to find today's Western European civilization. Before the Aryan Greek invasion, Greece was settled by black Egyptians. When I say Greece is nothing but Egypt, but a later stage of Egypt as a colonial possession. All right. You see, interracial sex and reproduction was a frequent constant whenever people of different races interact. And then that's just called diluting of the people. You start changing the physical composition of the people. We start continuing to mix out. Many people don't want to hear that, but that's what happens. The original inhabitants of Rome were black Africans called the Etruscans. In Roman society, blacks were emperors, writers, philosophers, generals, and popes. I'm going to repeat that again. The original inhabitants of Rome were black Africans called the Etruscans. In Roman society, blacks were emperors, writers, philosophers, generals, and popes. Septimius Severus, an African-born Roman emperor, began ruling the Roman Empire around 193 AD. At least 4 other Roman emperors were blacks, way more than 4, including Lucius Quietus, one of Rome's greatest generals. Socially, Roman York, a woman of black African ancestry, was one of the richest and highly valued inhabitants of the 4th century Roman Empire. All right. In northeast Europa, the people of the British Isles have a large black African strain in their DNA dating back to prehistoric times. Celtics were described as dark Africans. Roman historian Pliny described the Britons of the 2nd century AD as possessing a complexion similar to Ethiopians in sub-Saharan Africa. Tacitus, another Roman historian, described one of the British tribes as having dark complexion and curly hair. The Picts of Scotland were identified as black Africans as well. Bones of sub-Saharan African women dating back to hundreds of years after the Roman Empire fell, 896 AD to 1025 AD, were found among the remains of the English. Black Africans settled in Germany as far back as the Old Stone Age. Certain Danish tribes in northwest Germany were described as black. Many German families have coat of arms with black progenitors. The patron saint of Cogburg, Germany, is a black African believed to be Saint Morantus, dating back to 1521. The Nazis' cross used by the Third Reich derived from the Black Knight. Okay, I'm going to stop there. I could read on, but I'm going to stop there, and I'm going to emphasize this. All right. No, I'm going to read this part. Yeah, this is one of the part I want to read too. Get a good focus. The original inhabitants of ancient Greece were the Pelasgians, a black race. This finding verifies the genetic connection between Greeks and black Africans. The Pelasgians established the first civilization in Grecian history. Their civilization sprung its roots around 2500 BC. They descended from the oldest race of mankind, the Hamitic, or the black race, who were civilization builders. They initiated civilization and culture throughout the world. They were principal founders of civilization in Europe. They seeded both humanity and civilization from North Africa and to the Mediterranean and Southern Europe, leaving a mark on the entire European continent. The Pelasgians founded the largest Greek city-states. Therefore, blacks are the founders of Corinth, Phoenicians, Thebes, Cadmus from Phoenicia, Laconia, Sparta, and Lacedaemon, Athens, and Argos. The Greeks' own mythology states that these cities were founded by Hamites. According to Plutarch, the Pelasgians which founded Athens were Kemet colonizers. The Pelasgians who founded Athens were Kemet colonizers. The Pelasgians who founded Athens were Kemet colonizers. The Pelasgians were comprised of various tribes, including the Carians, the Lelegs, the Cadmeans, and the Gargamentes. Their Mycenaean Bronze Age culture flowed out of Crete, Argos, Laconia, and Attica. These maritime colonizers that found and developed these Greek city-states migrated from Phoenicia and Kemet, early Egypt. The Comedians and the Phoenicians were descendants of Cush. The land of Cush was the land of incumbent present-day Sudan. The Greeks called their origins Ethiopia, meaning the land of the burnt-faced people, or land of the burnt faces. The Comedians called it Nubia. The Phoenicians spread Kemet culture to Greece and Rome. Discrepantly, the Pelasgians were derived from long-headed people who were short, black, dark-haired, and dark eyes. These African migrants spoke a non-Indo-European language. Herodotus acknowledged that they were non-Indo-European Greeks. He described them as pre-Greek, pre-Hellenic people. The Pelasgians were widely described as highly intellectual, receptive, active, and simple people, chiefly occupied with agriculture, warlike when necessary, through preferring peace. Reportedly, they built canals, subterranean waterworks, dams, walls, astounding strength, and most excellent construction. The gods and goddesses were predominantly the same as the Comedians. Why? Because it was the same damn people. They maintained a matrilineal society and worshiped female deities typical for most ancient Africans throughout the continent. Eventually, the Indo-European Hellenes subjected Pelasgians and assimilated them into their population. Despite the Greek language now used, the Pelasgians were the black people who originally inhabited the civilization developed. All right? And I'm going to stop there. I read that because I'm letting you know something. I said before, not even reading this book, is that the Greeks were nothing but a land that the Egyptians colonized and ancient Egyptians of a later period. So a lot of stuff the Greeks started doing, they kind of strayed away. Hell, they really strayed away from their ancestors. The Greeks and people built the Greeks and all those city-states of Greece were Negroes. Same thing for the Romans. Originally Negroes, the Etruscans. That was a Negro empire. And you always had Negroes there in power. The unfortunate thing is you started having Negroes start procreating with some of their little white slaves. That's what it's about. All right. But you had these the reason you see all these images of black people in ancient Greece or Rome, it wasn't that, the white people were astounded and wild over blackness. No, the people who ruled the land was black. When you have bed stands, or pillow stands, bed lifters, images of black people on chairs, those are not slaves. Those are actually people who ruled the land. And I'm stating this is that all this was before 711 AD, because many Negroes still believe that the first time blacks went into Europe was the Islamic Moorish invasion around 711 AD. That's a lie. The original people in Europe for thousands of years were black people. Black people didn't come in and invade some white folks. No, it was black people already there, and black people already ruling there. And I said that in my other videos. And while I also mentioned that I read some stuff in this book that came from David McRitchie's book that talks about the black Europeans and where they come from. Now, all these names that we have that are European names, especially from the British Isles, are not names that originate from white people. White people hijacked. They originate from the black people of that region. And this is something that we're going to have to restudy and we'll continue to grow and try to acknowledge and learn, because our history is in our face, man. And I read you about the Americas is because that I mention all the time how the ancients sailed, they did maritime trade and selling. They did that all over the planet. You remember? They left Egypt, went to Greece. They sailed there. All right, they sailed there. So they had the technologies to sail that particular distance, that little short distance there, but they also had the technology to sail around the world. Black folks had boats, building ships, and sailing around the world. Like I said, the riverbed in the Americas were an ancient highway. Well, it was a super highway when you got to the big ocean seas. And then brothers and sisters did sail the ocean seas. They knew how to navigate the waters. All right? So when you hear stuff that you just came over here and slave shit, that is wrong information. That is terribly wrong information. When I'm trying to connect the dots, and my emphasis in this video is to talk about how you had not only black empires in the world, the black people ruling it, but they had the technology to build boats and sail around the world, globally. It wasn't just in one location. Brothers and sisters knew about this technology, building upon it, and sailing around it. And this is thousands of years. Remember, I also read about 20,000 years. 20,000 years ago, a group of black people were over here. White folks didn't exist. All right? You hear about the Solutrean culture, which originated in Southern Africa and then migrated, went to Europe and everything. You hear these white scholars, well, they came from Europe. And then PBS had a special showing a bunch of white people wearing, tattoo in their face or paint on their face. Those are some straight up Negroes, man. Because white folks didn't exist 20,000 years ago. They didn't exist. So those Solutrean people were Negroes. Period. That's how you get their ass. Because they haven't been here that long. And the Asians are a cross mixture between the black and white. Alright? So I want to emphasize this information in this video, because this information is very vital and you need to continue to study your history. The first people who were made prisoners of war, slaves, here in America were the Aboriginal black Indians. They were no Africans. They were the Aboriginal black Indians. They were done first and foremost and reclassified. Then you had to expel black Europeans. And remember, you had different groups of black people fighting over different beliefs and different tribal conflicts in Europe, which helped lose their power. All right. And then a horde or more of white folks coming in, because the black people ruled that land just like they ruled here in Americas. This is very vital information that needs to be out there, because you constantly hear people just talking about some 1619, which is false and fake, and that you were just descendant of African slaves, when black Americans are not African. We're not African. We're not African. So-called black Americans are not African. We are the Aboriginal Indians of this land, and we need to take pride in who we truly are. We really do. Really do. And that's why I kept going back and also talking about how different places they build dams, aqueducts, bridges. That's why I was showing you the Grand Canyon. How some of that stuff is so old, they carved into a rock and built rock type of walkways or bridges. They cut rock and made different pebbles, larger type rock when they cut and carved into it. And they also just carved into the rock and cut within the rock and created caves, man-made caves. They had man-made lakes, brought in the water to create the man-made lake, dams, all that, man. They did that. But unfortunately, we continue to push this slave narrative, and it's bothersome because it's not accurate. It really isn't. So this is why it's so important for us to know our true history. And that's why I brought up the Pelasgians of Europe, because those are the original Greeks, man. Those were the original Greeks. They were Negroes. Remember, white people are not indigenous to Europe. They're not the original Greeks. The original Greeks were Negroes. Period. They were black people. So-called black people. That's what the Greeks were. The original Greeks were. And the people who built Greece were Negroes originally. And then when you look at a lot of Greeks now, a lot of them look like quadroons and all that stuff because they have been mixed. And you can tell they've been mixed. It's like the people in North Africa. There was nothing but the quote, fixed mulattoes. You see it. It's just so obvious. That lets you right in there tell you that the original people in that region was also black. So you have to understand, you got to pick up on certain things. And I'm going to talk about how you pick up on a lot of BS when you hear this, man. And then when you hear a lot of these eugenicists, these little white liberals, man, when you hear anyone talking about let's mix and just come out looking one way, that's a way to bleach you out of your existence, man. That's sick. And also I want to talk about, man, I ain't gonna go there. I ain't gonna talk about that particular show, that stupid Bachelor show, because I'm gonna go into that probably in a future video. I'm gonna go into that and a little subtle racism. They had one black man I know on there and had him get a white woman. They had a mixed black guy to the fact, and they had 4 black women. I think the first 2 they had them choose white, and then the next 2 I think were American and chose African dudes. I don't see, even though they're black, they're still Nigerian guys. I think both of them was Nigerian. I could be wrong in that, but there's a thing that these people, a lot of these people know our true history, and they don't want to see an Aboriginal black American or Aboriginal black American woman. They don't want to see black people, period. But particularly Aboriginal black American men, because as a black and Aboriginal black American women, because what they'll see is the true Indian of this land. So they want to try to find a way to wipe us out, and then wipe us out in a way, and then put their hands behind their back, say I had nothing to do with it. My hands are clean, which you continue to promote, an image of trying to bleach out the population. I said before in other videos how that was done in various different countries, not only in Brazil and Argentina, Australia, in the Caribbean, Jamaica, all those places. It was an attempt to bleach out its black melanated population on those islands. So this is why you need to study all that stuff. This is why it's so important you need to fully study your history, because there's a concerted effort to wipe you out. And we're helping them out by doing some of the dumb stuff out here. So I just want to make that quick video, brothers and sisters, man. I'll see I'll try to make one again on weekend. But I just had to make that video. Alright, brothers and sisters, I love you. And make another video.